They didn't break a single window. They didn't fire a single shot. And when it was over, no one even knew it had happened. On a cold December night in 1978, $6 million vanished from New York City, silently, cleanly, almost politely. No alarm screaming, no police chase, no witnesses brave enough to talk. By the time the sun rose over JFK Airport, the largest cash robbery in American history was already over, and that was just the beginning. Because this wasn't a story about stealing money, it was a story about what happens after you steal it. Greed, paranoia, friends turning into threats, and a mastermind who believed the only way to protect a perfect crime was to erase everyone connected to it. This wasn't just a heist, it was a countdown to betrayal, to fear, to silence. Tonight we're going back to New York in the winter of 1978, to the crime that shocked law enforcement, inspired Hollywood, and proved that the most dangerous part of a robbery is surviving it. New York City, late 1978. A city worn thin by crime, corruption, and cold ambition. The streets were loud, but trust was quiet. Sirens echoed like background music, and fear had become part of the architecture. The city teetered on the edge of bankruptcy, its neighborhoods divided by invisible lines, some ruled by the law, others by men who believed they were the law. This was a New York where money disappeared as quickly as people, where fortunes were made in smoke-filled rooms and lost in shallow graves, where loyalty meant survival, and betrayal meant death. And somewhere within this city, inside the labyrinth of airports, cargo terminals and backroom deals, sat a fortune so large it would change the criminal underworld forever. $6 million in cash, untraceable, uninsured, waiting. By the late 1970s, the American mafia was both powerful and paranoid. The so-called Five Families controlled New York's underworld: Gambino, Lucchese, Genovese, Bonanno, and Colombo. Each family ruled territory, rackets, and men. But the glory days were fading. Federal prosecutors were watching more closely. Informants were turning. Surveillance vans parked where they never had before. Wiretaps whispered secrets into government ears. And yet greed had not diminished. If anything, it had sharpened. The mob needed big scores, fast money, cash that left no paper trail. Crimes so bold they would remind everyone, law enforcement included, that the mafia still owned the shadows. That hunger set the stage for something unprecedented. James "Jimmy" Burke wasn't Italian, and that mattered. In the mafia, bloodlines were everything. Only Italians could be made men. Everyone else worked beneath them, useful, profitable, disposable. But Jimmy Burke refused to accept limits. Born to Irish parents, Burke grew up violent, ambitious, and fearless. He learned early that brutality earned respect faster than charm. By the time he was a teenager, he was already stealing cars, hijacking trucks, and intimidating men twice his size. What Burke lacked in mafia pedigree, he made up for in ruthlessness. He became an associate of the Lucchese crime family, running rackets at JFK Airport, hijacking cargo trucks, skimming profits, and enforcing debts with terrifying efficiency. Those who worked for him feared him. Those who crossed him didn't live long enough to regret it. But Jimmy Burke wanted more than respect. He wanted immortality. John F. Kennedy International Airport was a maze of opportunity. Every day millions of dollars in cargo passed through its terminals: electronics, jewelry, currency, valuables from across the world. And much of it moved with astonishingly little security. The mafia understood airports better than anyone. They controlled unions, bribed guards, planted informants, and exploited loopholes in outdated security systems. Jimmy Burke's crew hijacked cargo trucks. So often it became routine. Drivers were threatened, trailers vanished, merchandise was fenced within hours. But even Burke knew truck hijacking was small time. The real money didn't ride on highways, it flew. Lufthansa Airlines handled international currency shipments, millions of dollars flown in from overseas banks. Germany, Italy, Switzerland, foreign cash arrived at JFK before being distributed to American banks. And in the late 1970s, much of that money passed through Lufthansa's cargo terminal with shockingly minimal protection. The airline relied on routine, predictable schedules, trusted employees, and one of those employees was cracking under pressure. Louis Werner was not a gangster. He was not brave, and he was not careful. A mid-level Lufthansa cargo supervisor, Werner had access to schedules, shipment values, and security procedures. He also had debts, serious ones. When bookmakers came calling, Werner panicked. When mob-connected gamblers offered a solution, he listened. Information became currency. Werner revealed that millions of dollars in untraceable cash regularly sat overnight in the Lufthansa vault at JFK. Cash that was not insured. Cash that, if stolen, would quietly disappear from balance sheets rather than spark international scandal. The vault had alarms. But alarms could be delayed. Guards could be neutralized. Locks could be opened with the right pressure. The idea was dangerous and irresistible. Henry Hill lived between worlds, not Italian enough to be made, too connected to be ignored. Hill had grown up idolizing mobsters. He worked for Jimmy Burke for years, running errands, fencing goods, smoothing over deals. He understood both the street and the system. When Werner's information surfaced, it was Hill who carried the spark. He understood the magnitude immediately. This wasn't another hijacking, this was history. So Henry Hill did what he always did when something big emerged. He went to Jimmy Burke. Burke listened without interrupting. Hill spoke carefully about the cash, the vault, the schedules, the inside man, the risks. Jimmy Burke's face remained unreadable. He had heard big ideas before. Most ended badly. But this one was different. $6 million, possibly more, cash that could fund a lifetime of power, or destroy everyone involved. Burke leaned back, thought about rivals, about the mafia hierarchy, about proving himself beyond any doubt. Then he made a decision. If this was going to happen, it would be done his way. Perfect, silent, final. Big crimes required trusted men. Burke selected carefully. Veterans of hijackings, men who could follow orders, men who understood that silence was survival. Thomas Monteleone, Joseph Monry, Angelo Sepe, Louis Cafora, each had a role, each had something to gain, and each unknowingly had everything to lose. Trust was absolute, until it wasn't. The plan would take months. Surveillance, timing, backup plans, contingencies for betrayal. Burke knew the greatest danger wasn't the police. It was people, loose talk, greed, fear. As winter closed in on New York, the city carried on unaware that the largest cash robbery in American history was quietly assembling itself in the shadows of JFK Airport. And once the gears were in motion, there would be no stopping them. Not the mafia, not the FBI, not even the men who planned it. Every great crime begins with information, not rumors. Not bravado, but details. Jimmy Burke demanded precision. He wanted to know exactly how the Lufthansa vault worked, how many doors, how many locks, how many seconds between alarms and response. Louis Werner became a reluctant architect of his own betrayal. He explained that the vault sat inside the Lufthansa cargo building at JFK. At night, large shipments of cash were stored there temporarily before being transferred to banks the next morning. The alarm system had a critical weakness. Once triggered, it sent a delayed signal, giving intruders precious minutes before authorities were alerted. Minutes that could mean freedom or death. Security relies on vigilance, but routine breeds blindness. Werner described the guards when they arrived, how often they checked doors when they grew bored. Human habits became exploitable patterns. The guards weren't corrupt. They were tired. Cold nights, long shifts, same paths walked again and again. Jimmy Burke smiled at that. Routine was his favorite accomplice. JFK Airport was more than an airport. It was an ecosystem. Union workers, cargo handlers, truck drivers, many quietly connected to organized crime. Some were loyal, others were greedy. A few were desperate. Burke's influence ran deep. He didn't need to control everyone, just enough people to keep mouths shut and doors open. No alarms raised, no suspicious delays, no unexpected patrols. The airport wouldn't stop the heist. It would unknowingly allow it. Weeks passed in quiet observation. Burke's crew watched shift changes, timed guard patrols, counted minutes between checks, listened to police radio chatter. Every detail was logged mentally. No written notes, no evidence. December crept closer. Snowstorms covered tracks. Darkness arrived earlier each evening. The city slowed. Perfect conditions. Big scores change people. As the plan grew real, so did the pressure. Some crew members drank more. Others talked too much. A few began to imagine life after the money. Jimmy Burke noticed everything. He saw nervous glances, heard careless jokes, felt ambition swelling beyond control. Greed was a threat as dangerous as law enforcement. Burke reminded them, sometimes gently, sometimes not, that mistakes would not be forgiven. Although Jimmy Burke wasn't a made man, nothing this large could happen without quiet consent. Word traveled upward, carefully, indirectly. The Lucchese family leadership understood the opportunity. They also understood the risk. They didn't give written permission. They didn't ask questions. Their silence was approval. If Burke succeeded, they would collect. If he failed, he would stand alone. The date was chosen for a reason. December 11th, 1978. A Monday night. Quiet. Predictable. Cash shipments from overseas banks had arrived days earlier and would sit overnight. The weather forecast called for cold, possibly snow. Fewer eyes, slower response. Muted streets. Once the date was set, there would be no turning back. The getaway vehicle was ordinary by design. A stolen van, clean, reliable, unremarkable. No flashy plates, no mechanical risks. After the job, it would disappear. Nothing that touched the heist would survive long. Not vehicles, not evidence, not people who couldn't be trusted. Burke laid out the rules. No unnecessary violence, no improvisation, no souvenirs. Everyone had a role. Everyone followed orders. The money would be delivered to him. Distribution would come later. Questions were not welcome. This wasn't a crew anymore. It was a machine. On the night before the heist, New York slept. Families gathered indoors. Televisions glowed. Radios played softly. Across the city, men lay awake, some staring at ceilings, others drinking, others convincing themselves this was just another job. But it wasn't. History was waiting at JFK Airport, locked behind steel doors and guarded by routine. And when morning came, nothing would be the same. Midnight passed quietly at John F. Kennedy International Airport. Jets slept on frozen runways. Cargo bays hummed with low mechanical noise. The city beyond the airport faded into darkness, wrapped in winter stillness. It was the kind of night where nothing seemed possible. And that was exactly why it was perfect. Just after midnight, a van rolled toward the Lufthansa cargo terminal. No sirens, no alarms, no rush. Inside, the men said little. Every sound, the engine, the tires, their own breathing, felt too loud. This was the moment where planning ended and fate took over. There would be no second chances. The door opened easily, too easily. Inside, the terminal looked just as it always did. Rows of crates, long corridors, fluorescent lights buzzing faintly overhead. The guards were where Werner said they would be. Routine held. There was no shouting, no panic. The guards were caught off guard, confused more than afraid. The message was simple and firm: stay still, stay quiet, and you'll go home alive. Jimmy Burke had been clear. This wasn't about blood, it was about money. The vault waited. Behind steel walls sat stacks of foreign currency, cash flown in from Europe, untouched and uncounted by American banks. The alarm delay began ticking the moment the system was triggered. Time compressed. Seconds mattered. The door opened. Inside, the scale of it stunned even the men who expected it. Bundles of cash. More than imagined. More than promised. $6 million or more sat quietly, unaware it was about to vanish into history. No cheering, no celebration, only movement. Bags filled quickly. Every movement rehearsed. Every step efficient. No wasted motion. Outside the vault, the terminal remained silent. No alarms screamed. No sirens approached. The city slept on. Minutes later they were gone. The vault stood empty. The guards were unharmed. The terminal looked unchanged, except for one thing: the money was gone. The van merged into the night. No police pursuit, no roadblocks, no suspicion. The largest cash robbery in American history had already happened, and almost no one knew it yet. Morning came quietly. Workers arrived, shifts changed, coffee brewed, then someone opened the vault. Disbelief turned to panic. $6 million gone. Phones rang, voices rose, questions flooded the room. How? Who? When no answers came. The FBI took over quickly. This wasn't just theft, it was international money, foreign banks, diplomatic embarrassment. Agents combed the terminal for clues. They found almost nothing. The crime shocked law enforcement. No fingerprints, no witnesses who could talk, no obvious suspects. For a moment it seemed impossible, a perfect crime, but perfection never lasts. Jimmy Burke didn't celebrate. He waited. He knew the real danger came after the score. Greed would surface, fear would grow, people would talk, and Jimmy Burke had no tolerance for loose ends. In the days after the heist, New York buzzed with rumors. But among the men who pulled it off, there was silence. No celebrations, no flashy spending, no public acknowledgement. Jimmy Burke ordered everyone to stay invisible. He understood something most criminals ignored: the robbery was over, but survival had just begun. Money changes behavior. Some crew members wanted their share immediately. Others began imagining escape, new lives, new identities, far from New York. Burke saw danger in every impulse. Greed led to talking. Talking led to attention. Attention led to prison. Or worse, the same money that made the heist legendary was now poisoning it from within. Burke didn't fear the FBI. He feared people. He suspected that someone would brag, that someone would spend too freely, that someone would make a mistake. And Burke believed in one rule above all else: loose ends destroy empires. One by one, men connected to the heist began to vanish from the criminal landscape. Some left town. Some stopped answering calls. Some were never seen again. Word spread quietly through the underworld. The Lufthansa money came with a cost. The FBI refused to let the case fade. Agents tracked unusual spending. They watched known airport criminals. They followed whispers through informants. Jimmy Burke's name surfaced again and again, but suspicion wasn't evidence, and evidence was hard to find. Henry Hill felt the walls closing in. Friends were disappearing. Law enforcement was watching. Trust was evaporating. Hill knew too much, and in the world he lived in, knowing too much was deadly. Fear breaks loyalty faster than money ever could. As paranoia spread, alliances weakened. Men questioned whether Burke would protect them or eliminate them. The crew that once felt invincible now felt hunted from both sides. Eventually, Henry Hill made a choice. Not out of courage, not out of guilt, out of survival. He cooperated with federal authorities, offering insight into mob operations, including the world that made the Lufthansa heist possible. The perfect crime had found its flaw. Human nature. Ironically, Jimmy Burke was never convicted for the Lufthansa heist itself. Instead, he was brought down by other crimes. The smaller ones that piled up over time. The man who masterminded the greatest cash robbery in American history would spend the rest of his life behind bars, not defeated, but contained. Much of the Lufthansa money was never recovered. Some believe it was spent. Others believe it was buried. A few believe it disappeared with the men who vanished after the heist. The truth remains locked away, like the vault once was. The Lufthansa heist entered legend. Books were written, films were made, stories were embellished. Most famously, it inspired Goodfellas, immortalizing a crime that in reality destroyed nearly everyone connected to it. What looked glamorous on screen was brutal in life. The Lufthansa heist wasn't just a robbery. It was a warning that no crime is truly perfect, that greed always leaves fingerprints, that silence never lasts forever. For one winter night in 1978, a group of men outsmarted the system, but the system waited, and in the end it collected its debt. New York moved on. It always does, but somewhere beneath its streets, in whispered stories and unanswered questions, the echo of the Lufthansa heist still lingers. A crime too big to forget, and too costly to repeat. If you love diving into this crime story, hit like and subscribe to uncover more shocking true crimes, untold heists, and the dark stories behind history's most notorious criminals. Don't miss what's coming next.